It's 6 p.m. on a Thursday here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Chen. Let's begin with the headlines. President Park Geun-hye plans to launch a strategic meeting for the science and technology sector as part of measures to boost support for AI development in the country. To strongly counter North Korea's continued provocations, U.S. President Barack Obama signs an executive order hitting the regime with a fresh set of sanctions, while Seoul's ambassador to the UN says the global body would impose even stronger sanctions on Pyongyang if the regime violated the recently adopted UN resolutions. South Korean shares and local currency hit yearly highs as the U.S. Federal Reserve keeps its rates unchanged. Seeking to capitalize on the public attention directed toward the man versus machine match of Baduk, also known as Go, the South Korean government has announced plans to further boost its investment in the artificial intelligence and information sectors. To coordinate its efforts, the president is launching a new strategic meeting that she will chair regularly. Song Ji-sun starts us off.
Korea is #1 in the world when it comes to R&D, with its investment amounting to over 4% of its GDP as of 2014. But its productivity is just a third of the United States. President Park thinks the inefficiency is because the country lacks a control tower for distributing and managing its R&D resources. So she will launch a new strategic science and technology meeting that she will chair herself. The meeting will complement the work of the existing National Science and Technology Council, which coordinates the needs of related ministries based on demand. The president made her announcement at a meeting on fostering intelligence information technology, where she stressed that there is no need to fear the rapid development of artificial intelligence, adding that humanity can benefit from what it has to offer. Park said that AI, which could affect practically all sectors across society, has great potential to create new jobs and industries. She said the government will build platforms for the private sector, including a research center and infrastructure for big data processing, to enable Korea to take another leap into the fourth industrial revolution as an ICT powerhouse. President Park says innovation is the key in research and development, and to support that, the government will pay attention to what private researchers need and focus its efforts on deregulation. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
Internal divisions are threatening the country's political parties as they prepare for an upcoming general election in less than a month's time. And with the clock winding down, the pressure is on. For details, we turn to Kim Young-gil.
At the ruling Saenuri Party, the so-called pro-Park faction of lawmakers loyal to President Park Geun-hye is under fire for its candidate nomination process. Most pro-Park lawmakers have been given the go-ahead to run in the April 13th election without primaries, while non-Park members have been left out. Saenuri Chairman Kim Moo-sung, who also heads the non-Park faction, boycotted Thursday's Supreme Council meeting in protest after the nomination committee, controlled by Park loyalists, refused to reconsider the decision. Kim's action drew the ire of Kim Tae-ho, a key pro-Park member.
It was immature of Chairman Kim to boycott the Thursday meeting when he is the leader of the Saenuri Party, but we will go ahead with the meeting to discuss pending issues.
During the meeting, Supreme Council members said they would demand an apology from Kim, but Kim has refused. Later in the day, another member of the non-Park faction, three-term lawmaker Jin Young, quit the party because he was left off the nomination list. He said that as someone who has been with the party for 20 years, he felt betrayed. He will now run as an independent. Over on the opposition side, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea is also keeping incumbent lawmakers off its nomination list, and it too is seeing the consequences. The party has eliminated 30 sitting lawmakers from its nomination list so far, which is 30% of its 105 seats in parliament. And on Thursday, first-term lawmaker Boo Ja-yeon, who was left off the nomination list, defected to the minor opposition People's Party. The People's Party had been considering a merger with Minju, but that plan has since lost one of its biggest advocates. Senior People's Party member Kim Han-gil, who had been at odds with co-leader An Chol-soo over the merger, conceded defeat and announced he will not run in the election to take responsibility for failing to unite the Liberal bloc. Kim Young-gin, Arirang News.
The United States has slapped tough new sanctions on North Korea in response to its recent nuclear and ballistic missile tests. The White House emphasized that the sanctions target the regime, not the North Korean people. Park Ji-won has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama has signed an executive order hitting North Korea with a fresh set of sanctions in response to the North's January nuclear test and February missile launch. The White House said in a statement the executive order enables the U.S. to implement the latest UN Security Council resolution and a set of recently enacted U.S. sanctions against Pyongyang. The White House statement went on to say that the U.S. and the global community will not tolerate North Korea's illicit nuclear and ballistic missile activities and will continue to pressure North Korea until it comes into compliance with its international obligations. The new sanctions aim to cut off the Kim Jong-un regime's financial resources, including a new measure prohibiting the North's exportation of workers, which constitute a significant part of the regime's revenue. The sanctions also cover an extensive list of firms and individuals from North Korea's mining and energy industries, as well as those engaged in cyber terrorism and those who contribute to the North's human rights violations. The set of sanctions could also be applied to individuals or entities from third countries that have business relations or contracts with North Korean officials or government affiliate agencies subject to the sanctions. Moreover, the measures have also been applied to the Propaganda and Agitation Department of the North's ruling Workers' Party for the first time. In regard to these sanctions, South Korea welcomed the U.S. government's move.
The executive order shows Washington's will to strongly counter the continuous provocations from North Korea, including the recent nuclear test and missile launch. The Foreign Ministry highly appreciates such decision.
In addition to the latest UN resolution on Pyongyang and other independent punitive measures, such as those imposed by the EU, the Foreign Ministry expects the U.S. sanctions to add more pressure on the North Korean regime. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
If North Korea conducts another nuclear test or long-range missile launch, the UN Security Council is sure to take action. That's according to South Korea's ambassador to the UN, Oh Jun, who told reporters in Seoul on Thursday that in the event of a violation, an even stronger resolution than the one it recently adopted would be taken up almost automatically. He added it's difficult to say which form the stronger sanctions would take, but the sections in the newest resolution turned out to be weaker than expected. When asked about the international implementation of the sanctions, Oh said there hasn't been much progress yet, but all UN member states have shown their strong determination to support it. A sign that the UN sanctions slapped on North Korea are already working. Russia's biggest energy company decides to stop doing business with the regime. Citing Russian media reports, Radio Free Asia reported Wednesday, Gazprom said it is suspending business with North Korea in a memorandum of understanding regarding its plan to issue new Eurobonds. The Russian energy company said any business links with North Korea could subject it to international sanctions and added it is not doing any energy-related business with the North at this time. Gazprom had been pursuing oil exploration and mining businesses with Pyongyang. South Korea is monitoring two blacklisted North Korean vessels that have crossed into its waters this month. The Coast Guard said Thursday the North Korean ship Orion Star was detected going west from the South Sea on Thursday. The ship is one of 31 vessels that have been blacklisted by the UN as part of the current resolution punishing the North for its latest nuclear test and long-range missile launch. The ship departed from Liaoning Harbor in China just a day after the UN sanctions was imposed. Another North Korean vessel, the Everbright, was detected near the South Sea earlier this month. The ship was registered under the flag of Sierra Leone, a practice the North uses to avoid regulations, but has since disappeared from radar. South Korea is monitoring the blacklisted vessels to see if they are involved in illicit arms trade. The U.S. government has urged North Korea to promptly release a young American college student who was recently sentenced to 15 years with hard labor for allegedly trying to steal a propaganda sign from a hotel in Pyongyang. White House Press Secretary Josh Earnest issued the appeal on Wednesday, accusing Pyongyang of using detained Americans like Otto Warmbier as pawns to pursue a political agenda. He said the U.S. wants the North Korean government to pardon Mr. Warmbier, grant him special amnesty, and release him immediately. The White House says the offense he was found guilty of would not warrant an arrest and imprisonment in just about any other country in the world. Earnest also stressed that the U.S. government has no greater priority than the welfare and safety of Americans abroad. It was an upbeat day on the local bourse, with the Kospi topping the psychologically significant 2,000 mark at one point in trading. This comes after the Federal Reserve decided to hold its key rate steady during its two-day meeting in Washington. Kim Min-ji has the details.
Korean shares on the local currency both hit yearly highs on Thursday. Korea's benchmark Kospi gained nearly 0.7% on Thursday to close at just under the 1,990 mark, the highest level so far this year. The Kospi even topped the 2,000 level at one point in trading. And the Korean currency closed at over 1,173 won against the U.S. dollar, up almost 1.7% from the previous day's close. This follows overnight gains on Wall Street in light of the Fed's decision to leave its key interest rate unchanged.
The committee decided to maintain its target range for the federal funds rate. This decision partly reflects the implications for the U.S. economy of the global economic and financial developments.
That means a current interest rate target of 0.25 to 0.5% will stay the same for now. On top of that, Fed officials are now calling for 2 rate hikes this year, down from the previously envisioned 4.
The Fed is taking what's going on in the global economy into consideration. Looking at the Fed's statement in the past and now, we can see it's changing from focusing on the local economy when deciding rates to risk management, like how global uncertainties will play out for the U.S. economy and whether it will weaken the recovery momentum.
The Fed also revised down its growth forecast for the U.S. economy to 2.2% this year, down from its previous projection of 2.4%. The outlook for inflation was also cut to 1.2% by the year's end, down from a prior 1.6% call. The Fed said moderate economic expansion and continued job growth would accommodate rate hikes down the line, prompting many analysts to say a rate hike could be in the works in June. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
China is now the biggest investor in Korean bonds, nudging the United States down to second. According to the Korea Exchange, China owned nearly $15 billion worth of Korean bonds as of the end of February. The U.S. held $12.3 billion. This is the first time China has been the largest holder of Korean bonds. Last month, foreign investors sold off $3.7 billion worth of Korean bonds to rebalance their investment portfolios amid market volatility. But Chinese investors decided to buy local bonds for future gains. Newly released figures by the International Monetary Fund rank Korea 6th in the world in terms of financial development. The assessment is in sharp contrast to a different track record by the World Economic Forum based on surveys of businesses. Park Jong-won looks into the digits.
The latest IMF index puts Korea high on the country list for overall financial health. This is based on a working paper by the International Monetary Fund released in January, covering a broad range of financial indicators. The paper, which looked at 2013 data, noted that Korea ranked 6th in the world, behind Switzerland, Australia, Britain, the US, and Spain. The study observed the financial development trends of 183 countries, looking at 3 key factors: financial depth, access, and efficiency, and was measured by a score range of 0 to 1, with 1 being the highest possible level. Until recently, the IMF had used only the financial depth category to reflect the scale of a country's financial sector compared with the real economic activity. This is the first ever broad-based evaluation by the IMF, although it's not an official release. The subcategories of assessment included the portion of pension fund asset per GDP, return on assets, the aggregate value of listed stocks compared to the GDP, and so on. The Bank of Korea said Korea's Financial Development Index of 0.854 is far higher than the OECD average of 0.667. In particular, Korea ranked at #1 for financial market efficiency, receiving the highest possible score of 1.0, which measured the turnover ratio of listed stock. These results are in stark contrast to an assessment made by the World Economic Forum last year. While the latest report puts Korea ahead of the pack, a BOK official noted that the figures should not be overestimated, as they lack variables like financial innovation, diversity of service, and globalization. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
FIFA is going to try and reclaim millions of dollars pocketed illegally by its corrupt members and other football officials. A U.S.-based probe exposed deeply ingrained corruption within and around football's world governing body, and FIFA estimates tens of millions of dollars were diverted from the sport through bribery, kickbacks, and corrupt schemes carried out by the defendants, including former executives Jack Warner, Chuck Blazer, and Jeffrey Webb. FIFA has submitted documents to the U.S. authorities in an effort to get the cash back. Football's ruling body has admitted to bribes being taken as part of the bidding process for the 1998 and 2010 World Cups. And that brings us to the end of our newscast. As always, thank you for watching.